have you ever really thought about what happens when you buy something with Bitcoin? I mean, on your end, it feels pretty much instant, right? But behind that simple tap on your phone, there's this incredible dance of cryptography and global consensus happening. Okay, let's pull back the curtain and demystify this whole process. We're going to follow one single purchase from start to finish.
Look, it's easy to be skeptical at first. In fact, that's the exact reaction from Andreas Antonopoulos, the author of Mastering Bitcoin, the book we're drawing from today. His first thought? Piff, nerd money. And that's probably a pretty relatable feeling, right? But then he actually sat down and read the original white paper, and what he found in there changed his mind completely.
And this is the absolute core of it. Bitcoin isn't really about the money. The money is just the first thing it does. The real, jaw-dropping innovation here is the creation of a trust network that doesn't need a middleman. It works without a bank, without a government, without any central authority at all. It's a solution to a problem computer scientists have been wrestling with for decades, and the implications are, well, they're huge.
All right, to really see how this works, let's meet Alice. She's new to this whole Bitcoin thing, and she wants to get started. And the very first thing she's going to need is a wallet.
Okay, right off the bat, let's clear up a huge misconception. Your Bitcoin wallet doesn't actually hold any coins. Think of it like your email app. That app doesn't store your emails, right? They live on servers somewhere. It's the same with Bitcoin. Your coins live on the global public ledger, the blockchain. Your wallet is just the software you use to manage your secret keys, and those keys are what give you control over your money on that ledger.
So it all boils down to these digital keys. Every wallet is built around what's called a key pair. First, you've got a public key. You can think of this like your bank account number. It's totally safe to share it with anyone who wants to send you money. And then you have the private key. This is the secret sauce. It's like your PIN number and your signature all rolled into one. It proves you own the Bitcoin and you have to guard it with your life.
And this whole thing is a one-way street, which is super important. It all starts with the private key, which is really just a gigantic randomly generated number. From that secret number, your wallet uses some really clever one-way math to create the public key. Then that public key gets crunched down into the shorter, more user-friendly Bitcoin address that you actually share with people. And the key phrase here is one way. You can always get from the private key to the public address, but you can never, ever go backwards. That's the bedrock of Bitcoin security. Okay, so Alice is all set up. To get her started, her friend Joe sends her 1/10 of a Bitcoin. Now, this amount doesn't just show up as a file in her wallet. Instead, a new entry gets logged on that global ledger, the blockchain, that basically says, hey everyone, 0.10 BTC is now under the control of Alice's address. This chunk of money is now sitting there as an unspent transaction output, a UTXO, just waiting for Alice to use it. And that brings us to the main event. Alice has Bitcoin. She's ready to go, and she's about to make her very first purchase, a cup of coffee from a local cafe run by a guy named Bob.
You can actually think of a Bitcoin transaction a lot like a page from an old accounting ledger. It's got two sides. On the left side, you have the inputs. This is where the money is coming from. And these inputs are always those unspent outputs we just talked about, like the one Joe sent Alice. Then, on the right side, you've got the outputs, which is where the money is going.
Now, this next part is really important, and it trips a lot of people up at first. You don't just shave off a little piece of Bitcoin to pay for something. These unspent outputs, these UTXOs, they act like physical cash. So if your coffee costs $2 and all you have in your pocket is a $10 bill, you can't just rip a corner off the 10, right? You have to hand over the whole thing and get $8 back in change. Bitcoin works the exact same way. Alice has to use that entire 0.10 Bitcoin bill she got from Joe as the input for her coffee purchase.
So let's break down exactly what Alice's wallet is creating. It takes one input, her entire 0.10 Bitcoin from Joe, and it creates two brand new outputs. The first one sends 0.015 BTC over to Bob's cafe. The second output is her change, 0.0845 BTC, which gets sent right back to a new address in her own wallet. Now, if you're doing the math, you'll see the numbers don't quite add up. That tiny little bit left over, that 0.0005 BTC, that's the transaction fee. And it's basically a tip for the miner who eventually adds her transaction to the blockchain.
So, Alice's wallet builds this transaction, she signs it with her private key to prove it's hers, and she hits send. What happens now? Well, her transaction has to find its way onto the permanent global record. So let's zoom out from her phone and watch how the network handles this.
The second she hits send, her wallet shouts her transaction out to a few computers on the network that it's connected to. They check it to make sure it's valid, and then they pass it along to their neighbors. In just a few seconds, it ripples across the entire globe. It ends up in what's called the mempool. You can think of it as a giant planet-wide waiting room for unconfirmed transactions. And this is where miners, like maybe a student in Shanghai named Jing, see it and get to work.
So how does the network decide who gets to add the next page to this global ledger? It's through a competition called proof of work. And the best analogy for it is a massive competitive game of Sudoku. It is incredibly difficult and requires a ton of computer power for thousands of miners to try and solve this complex puzzle. But, and this is the magic part, the second someone finds the solution, it is super easy for everyone else to glance at it and instantly know it's correct. This computationally expensive work is what keeps the whole network secure.
So this shared ledger is the blockchain. Miners, like Jing, are constantly grabbing a bunch of these pending transactions from the mempool, including Alice's coffee purchase, and bundling them into a block. Then, they all race to be the very first one to solve that computational puzzle for their block. Whoever wins gets to add their block to the end of the chain, and for their effort, they are rewarded with all the transaction fees from that block plus a big bounty of brand new Bitcoin.
And this is how the chain grows, one block at a time, about every 10 minutes. Once Jing's block, let's say it's block number 277,316, is added, it's mathematically linked to the one before it, locking it in place. Alice's coffee purchase is now official, but it gets even more secure. When the next block is added on top of hers, and then another one after that, her transaction gets buried deeper and deeper, making it essentially impossible to reverse. That's what people mean when they talk about confirmations. Every new block is one more confirmation. Okay, let's step back for a second and put all these pieces together. We've talked about keys and transactions and blocks and mining. What does this incredibly elegant system actually accomplish at the end of the day? Bitcoin basically creates trust out of thin air through 4 brilliant ideas all working together. You have a peer-to-peer network where no one is in charge. You have the blockchain, that public ledger that everyone can see and verify for themselves. You have distributed mining, the proof-of-work competition that makes it way too expensive to cheat the system. And finally, you have the transactions themselves, which use digital signatures to prove ownership without needing anyone to check an ID. Altogether, they create consensus.
What this whole thing is, really, is an elegant solution to a classic problem in computer science known as the Byzantine generals problem. The puzzle goes like this. How do you get a group of generals to agree on a coordinated plan of attack if they're all separated and can only communicate through messages that could be intercepted or faked, and some of the generals might even be traitors? Bitcoin's proof of work provides a way for this massive, decentralized network to agree on one single version of the truth, without needing a central commander they all have to trust.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. We've just seen a system where trust isn't handed down from an institution, like a bank or a government. It's an emergent property that just comes from math and code. So, if a network can do that for something as fundamental as money, what else can it do? What does a world like that look like? What does that change?